Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
Joining me now is Owen Schroyer, and as I was saying in the last segment, as Drudge pointed out today, the public's trust in the media is at an all-time historic low. Why is that? Well, Owen, of course, they've covered up the fact that she has physical problems, that she physically collapsed, but they're also covering up the fact that she's collapsing politically, collapsing in the polls. What's behind that?
Well, there's still a segment of the media that wants to deny that Donald Trump is now winning in the polls, or they try to make some spin about, oh, it's just momentary or it's just an illusion. Specifically, Bob Beckel from The Hill. Now, I found his coverage of this tremendously hypocritical. He says, every time I think that political analysts and writers will finally recognize that most of them don't understand much about political polls, they prove me wrong. But some of these political pros go on TV, write columns, interpreting polls for millions of voters who are just now beginning to focus on the presidential race. Most voters assume because these political pros are on TV or write for national newspapers, they know politics. This is the same guy whose headline reads, Trump poll numbers show his ceiling made of steel, not glass. So this guy just took his own column and tore his own column apart. Because Trump has been smashing glass ceilings, David, this entire time, but he says that it's made of steel. So this is what we're talking about. This is the media. Either Bob Beckel just doesn't have a clue what's going on, or he's just outright painting a false narrative.
Well, and that's what we say. They're outright painting a false narrative. And that's why the trust in media is collapsing on, because people understand the bias. That's the thing that has come off this time around, as Donald Trump was saying about the Republicans. Thanks for coming out of the closet and telling us what you really think and what you really represent. We understand now that you are a one party at the top, regardless of whether it's Democrat or Republican. It is a globalist multinational corporation party, okay? Both of these people. But that's what we see happening in the political aspect as well. Of course, he's saying, just like Karl Rove said, okay, Bob Beckel is on the Democrat side. Karl Rove was saying Donald Trump has a ceiling of 30%. Remember, that was when we had 16, 17 people in the race, and he was at 30%. He goes, all those people, those voters for these other candidates, none of them are going to come over to Trump, when we saw just the opposite happen. Okay, so now they're telling us it's a steel ceiling. He isn't going to go anywhere with this. But the other issue is all these different polling organizations that say that they're doing this scientifically. You know, I have to say, when I look at these models, just like the climate change models, they don't have any scientific basis if they don't agree with the data. When you look at a climate change model, when you look at the weather, when we went to look at the American Meteorological Society, they had all these scientists working on trying to predict the weather. They don't do a good job of that, okay? And so when you've got a model, you have to verify that model. And when I look at what the politicians are doing, they go out with these polls, 400 or 500 people, they say we've got a margin of error of 4 or 5 points. But when you look at the spread between these polls, it's more than adding up these margin of errors. They got two margin of error polls of 4 points, and they've got more than an 8-point spread between these. You got to say, at some point, some of these people at least don't know what they're talking about. Their models are false. And before we get away from the climate thing, I think it's amazing with Hillary collapsing in New York, saying she's overheated. Nobody can even agree on what the temperature was in New York. Have you noticed that? I mean, I snapshotted weather.com, and it showed that it was 78 degrees, 40 miles an hour, 40% humidity, 12 miles per hour winds, and yet we got people saying it was in the 80s, trying to cover for Hillary. And when they've got a spread of 5 or 6 degrees in the temperature, and these are the people who are telling us the world is going to melt down if we've got a 1 degree increase in temperature, and they're telling us that it's 5 or 6 degrees or even more in New York City, and the day that this is happening. And we can all look at the weather, we can look at the different thermometers. They can't even agree on the same day what the temperature is, and they're going to tell us that the world is melting down. But going back to the polls, I mean, do you believe these polls? Do you think that there's any scientific validity to these scientific polls?
Well, they are actually scientific polls, just like the climate rigged sciences. They're scientifically rigged to provide the outcome that they desire. So they are scientific in the fact that they rig them. They only pull the Democrats. They put the measuring sticks in the more, hotter areas wherever they're measuring. So they are scientifically rigged to get the outcome they desire. But, it's just funny. And we'll move on to this because we've got the numbers. But, Beckel says Trump has not closed any ground against Clinton in the last 30 days. I mean, that is just so inherently false
by their own model.
I can't even believe somebody would print that. I mean, I can't even believe somebody would put that down when we have so much evidence. Look at these polls from the LA Times that are probably scientifically rigged against Trump, but yet he's still winning. In this poll, Trump is up to 46.7%. Clinton is down to 42%. And it clearly shows in this poll that since 9/11, Clinton has taken a nosedive. So how can you say that Trump has gained no ground? That's absurd.
Well, at the time that they said with their polls, they said, hey, she's up 15 points. Trump just needs to get out. And of course, they weren't worried about the Republicans losing. They weren't saying, we want somebody that's going to be real competition for us. Okay. They were trying to use that as a push poll to convince people that he couldn't win so that his supporters would abandon him. Okay. But as you look at that, using these same narratives where they had more Democrats in the polls that they were polling, or looking at people that they say are likely voters, which means that this is not counting the people who Trump has brought in. His most adamant supporters are people who have been fed up with the political system, who haven't been voting for a long time, or not considered to be likely voters by these same metrics that they have. So when you look at all that, even by those measurements, because they haven't changed the way they do the polls, even by those measurements, she's lost that 15-point lead and is now down at a 5-point deficit. That's not a huge story, not for these people. Why? Because they are so incredibly and obviously biased for Hillary.
And we've even got the numbers to prove what you just said is right. GOP gaining on Dems in voter registration in 3 battleground states. And it's not only that the Republicans have more registered voters already in these states, they're also beating the Democrats in newly registered voters. And I think you can make a fair point, and it's been proven in polls, or at least, human intelligence on the streets, or just you talking to friends and family. Even Democrats don't like Hillary Clinton. So even registered Democrats, you can't count that as a vote for Hillary Clinton. But look at this, David. You talked about how they never expected Trump to be here. They thought Hillary would walk away with it. But now everybody realizes Democrats are panicking. They're already trying to figure out what they're going to do if Hillary can't make it. They know that Hillary's taken a nosedive since her collapse. It's even on Bloomberg. Nervous Democrats fret about Clinton stumbles as race tightens. So, it's funny. It's like, oh, she can do it. Nobody can beat her. Trump doesn't have a chance. Well, now here we are, just maybe 80 or 70 days from the election. It's pretty close. And now it looks like Hillary is the one that doesn't have a chance, and the Democrats are the ones panicking. And I can't help but laugh at the Democratic Party right now. If they would have nominated Sanders, they would have a real shot at this election. Do you think they're regretting and kicking themselves in the foot for not nominating Sanders? Of course it was rigged, but I don't know.
Of course it's rigged, and of course it's the insiders who are doing this, and they're not only are they dishonest, Owen, but they are arrogant about their dishonesty, okay? Just like we see these ridiculous stories that Hillary Clinton was feeding everybody in the wake of what happened on 9/11. They think that you're too stupid to understand. They have contempt for the voters. Why? Because she can do anything for her loyal base. She sees this constantly. No matter what she does, these people will fall in line behind her, send her money, shower her with love and affection. So she thinks she can get away with anything. I think all the politicians start to believe that they can shoot somebody in the middle of the road because they have so many people who love them. But the hypocrisy is absolutely amazing. And I think a lot of these people have been saying for the longest time, I'm with her. Now they're getting a little bit shaky about that. They wish they could get somebody else in there. They wish they weren't stuck with her, but I think they are. What's coming up next, Owen?
Well, me and Margaret Howell shot a segment on what is going on in London right now and how they're trying to basically Islamify London, and they want the whole political correctness, type of controlled speech atmosphere to try to bring in these people, scare people from speaking out against it, and then essentially just say, this is in the name of tolerance. This is in the name of political correctness. This is in the name of ending, racism or injustice that is systematic in their cities. And that's
same tactic we see everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah,
they come
tactic.
out, everything, all they see about people, the only thing they'll say, they won't argue any issues. We see this over and over again at the rallies. They'll just say, you're racist. They'll just label people. And then they'll come back and say, you're bigoted. No, bigotry is when you put people in groups that you don't know anything about, and you don't try to figure out what they're about. You just label them on the way that they look or where they stand or the clothes that they wear. That is true bigotry. That is an inside job, just as I said in the last segment about sexism in the DNC. It truly is an inside job, and so is the Islamophobia. We'll be right back with Owen Schroer and Margaret Howell. Stay with us.
In the past decade, we have witnessed unparalleled scientific discoveries in the area of health. But no one has put together a formula that focuses directly on brain health, nerve growth factors, and optimizing your cellular energy at the same time. DNA Force is one of the most expensive formulas to produce. Some of the ingredients in DNA Force are $12,000 a kilogram. We are using the coveted, patented, only American source of PQQ, CoQ10, and more. You want the best that's out there at the lowest price anywhere? Well, we're bringing you a total win-win. The ultimate value, cutting-edge, trailblazing game changer that also supports the InfoWar. We have produced a limited run of DNA Force, and it will take up to 12 weeks to produce more once we sell out. Secure your DNA Force today at InfoWarsLife.com or call toll-free 888-253-3139.